Hi, I'm just wondering what your favorite argument for the existence of God is.
Well, I don't know about these two fine gentlemen, but my favourite argument is the one with the concrete evidence that can be demonstrated and has God did it as the strongest conclusion rather than basically anything else. You know the one. It's the made-up argument from Doesn't Real. It's amazing. And you know it's actually good because I like it. Favoritism is of course the same as worth goddamn anything at all.
There are many different types of arguments that theists employ or use in order to argue that God exists.
What I find really interesting about God, though, arguments is the sheer variety of them that people do find more or less convincing. And why that is so interesting is the only metric for their value is the simple fact that a person can be convinced by it, while not a single one simply demonstrates a real thing is real, like pretty much any demonstration of a real thing generally should, without the need for a zillion different ways to quote-unquote demonstrate it to boot, almost like he's not real.
So you got some arguments, Jonathan, you may be familiar with what is known as the Kalam cosmological argument, where philosophers will argue that past time cannot be infinite, that there must be an absolute beginning of time and physical reality.
Which always ends with, thing can't be infinite, but of course God can, because we defined him that way, which is the same as proving that he's real. And then we sit there, wondering why atheists remain painfully unconvinced at my very, very clever because I said so argument.
These philosophers will use contemporary science to justify that claim.
Well, in my experience, what they will do is use their poor/completely non-existent understanding, or they will misrepresent the shit out of science in order to get there, thus coming to conclusions that often sound like they're based on science to other people who have poor/non-existent understandings of science, and they then genuinely believe the things they believe are supported by the science, when actually what they are is lies.
Some philosophers will try to argue philosophically that an infinite past time involves a contradiction and cannot be, and thus if a beginning, then it would require a cause. If the universe had a beginning, it would require a cause outside of itself, and that cause would have to be pretty powerful in order to bring the universe into existence.
They'd love to throw out that infinite time is not possible because logic, and will usually throw out something like Hilbert's Hotel to demonstrate that with infinite time, you can never reach a point when something happens. But the thing is, in the field where infinities are most used, aka mathematics, infinite time is just fine. If time is, say, a set of events, well, an infinite set of anything is not a problem. And absolutely mathematically hunky-dory. And then there's the outside of time and space cause, which, if you're gonna get semantic about things, can't work because the very notion of cause and effect is a thing that requires time and, in fact, space to function. And finally, even if there was a thing that did the universe, your assumption of powerful is just that, an assumption. A single human is not strictly all that powerful. Certainly you wouldn't think of them as powerful enough to destroy a planet on their own. But given enough time and intellect, they could develop nuclear weapons and wipe out all life on the planet. And hell, at the same time, given enough time, they could also kill all life on the planet with a toothpick. Patience might be a virtue, but it sure isn't a superpower.
So it's the contingency of the universe. In other words, that the universe didn't have to be, it began to exist, and it would need a cause or a creator.
The universe didn't have to be is unequivocally an assumption, one based frankly on absolutely nothing, certainly not any kind of data, so jumping to therefore God must do is a heck of a leap, and that's before even determining that any kind of creator thing could or would do a universe anyway. I mean, you're the one who wants to talk about necessary. If a God-man is self-sustaining and eternal, then there is literally no reason for one to make a universe at all, meaning that even if for some reason they did do that, that would truly make existence utterly meaningless.
You also have arguments from contemporary science, such as the fine-tuning.
Fine-tuning isn't from science, it is from theology masquerading as science. It comes with yet more built-in assumptions that life in the universe as we know it is the only way that life and the universe could be. And not only that, but also assumes that the various states of the universe are even variables at all, and can be changed to any significant degree. With finally the simple idea that the universe even is fine-tuned for life, when considering the only bit of it that we're sure has any in the first place is absolutely tiny and seemingly completely isolated by an endless void that by and large immediately and brutally ends life.
You may have looked into some of those. For these types of arguments, I would highly recommend you check out a philosopher and Christian apologist by the name of Dr. William Lane Craig. And his resources, he deals a lot with these sorts of arguments.
Ew, low bar Bill. I was hoping you were going to bring up a different idiot that I hadn't heard of already. But yeah, if you want to be unconvinced of anything other than you have found the world's smuggest moron, then sure, WLC is fine, I guess.
Now, Jonathan, there are other types of arguments for God's existence that try and prove, that claim to demonstrate, not just provide probable knowledge that God likely exists.
Wait, those were trying to make it seem likely God exists? If anything, every single one of them makes it seem far less than likely that God does a real if you think about any of them for even a second. I mean, seriously, I don't know if apologists know this, but I would bet no small number of theists are pushed away from God to atheism when they look into any one of them and say, wait a minute, this is gibberitic horse gubbins. What am I doing with my life?
But to demonstrate that God exists, and these are known as metaphysical or philosophical demonstrations.
The very notion of a metaphysical demonstration is so utterly ridiculous, I am completely unsurprised to hear it coming out of a theist's mouth. While metaphysics tends to talk a big game about asking the why of whatever branch of reality, the answers one might come to in the field are rarely, if ever, something that can in fact be demonstrated within physical reality. And if you can't do things in the place where real things do stuff, then it probably isn't.
And the arguments that sort of embody this sort of approach are famously St. Thomas Aquinas' 5 ways.
Ah, yes, of course, Tommy boy's 5 ways to make an argument that were not that great at the time and have since been debunked 7 ways from Sunday. But for some reason, theist dumbasses still cite them as if they haven't. Oh, right, because dumbasses. Ah, I would go into them, but he's not going to, so what's the frigging point?
And there are other philosophical demonstrations that sort of are related to Aquinas' 5 ways from the Summa Theologiae.
Ah, of course, related to the shitty points made by an idiot from 700 years ago. That means that they're good and not completely useless. And again, come pre-refuted by the preceding 700 years of skeptical refutation. Helpful.
And a resource that you can check out for those kinds of arguments, Jonathan, is Dr. Edward Feser, F-E-S-E-R, in his book, 5 Proofs of the Existence of God.
Always gotta love, I could totally prove this, but I'm not gonna. Instead, go read this shitty book that definitely doesn't prove it either. But it'll always be, if you didn't read the shitty book, then I win. Because that's the kind of attitude with this lot. They genuinely think being well read on nonsense somehow makes the nonsense not nonsense. Also, it's very annoying that a man literally called Feser didn't go into writing sci-fi instead. And no, I don't care that it's spelt different, and yeah, the name's right there, gagging to be used in a new Star Trek adaptation. Alas, 'twas never meant to be.
And one of those proofs in that book, which is coming and inspired from St. Thomas Aquinas, and basically, Jonathan, we start with things of our experience that exist.
You start with things that do exist, and then you wriggle your way all the way to things that don't, right? That's usually the order of operations for these things. Point at something in reality, apply some vague rules to them, and then say those rules do or don't apply to things outside of reality without any justification. Therefore, God. Am I right? I bet I'm right.
But they don't have to exist. Okay, now this is just a sketch. We can't defend all the premises here in this reasoning, but just here's the sketch.
Sketch? I can't say I've ever heard the term applied to a model of reality, but I like it. I mean, I'm sure whatever he's about to say is hilariously stupid, so sketch will more than likely be appropriate, like a cartoon or a comic routine. Also, literally everything in reality as a specific construct doesn't have to exist. That's like the whole thing about reality. Everything in it is a thing that could have been something else at that moment, and certainly was at least partly something, or more accurately many things else before. But even with that as the case, it does not mean that you can know anything of the sort about things outside of reality one way or the other, no matter how many times you define the way you want it to be as how it is.
The things of our experience, like the tree outside, do not have to exist. The tree outside, there was a time when it did not exist. There's going to be a time in the future when it won't exist.
Oh man, it's like he's trying to make me jealous of a damn tree and its merciful non-existence. Damn it. Unfortunately for me, I will exist forever, for I am whiskey made flesh, and whiskey is as eternal as it is delicious, and deliciously eternal. Our men are not allowed to drink my whiskey because it all belongs to me.
And from that, Jonathan, we get an insight that the principle and virtue of which it is something rather than nothing, namely its existence, the fact that it has existence.
God, this guy doesn't half rattle on, does he? And that's coming from me. Also, you're actually making a bit of a philosophical leap there. The first in this video, I'm sure, lol. Some very big brain smart guys would argue that existence isn't a property that something can have, like a color or roots. Existing is a thing that it's doing, a thing that it is. And I can only assume that you are putting it like that on purpose so that you can make a necessary boy so he can give existence, so then it can have it, rather than simply being what it do. Essentially, tell me the exact difference between a tree in front of you and a tree in front of you that exists. It's a distinction without a difference.
The tree does not have existence in virtue of its own essence or nature. It doesn't have it in virtue of just what it is. Otherwise, it would always exist. But since it hasn't always existed, it can't have existence in virtue of its own nature.
The hell do you mean essence? What is this, spirit science? There's no such thing as essence of tree. And even if that weren't woo-woo bullshit, to try and make things sound more oh wow than they need to be, even if something had existence as part of its essence, then a tree with leaves is no longer its own essence during winter. Or a dead tree. That's still a tree even if photosynthesis is part of its essence. Essentially, the point I'm trying to hammer into your likely very, very thick skull's essence is try and define things that are a tree's essence that I cannot take away without it no longer being a tree. That also allow me to define it as essentially, see what I did there, a million other goddamn things. And that's not to mention that even if something has the essence of existing, all you have to do to take that away is have the thing not exist anymore. You see, this is why having bullshit, useless terminology that doesn't mean anything in reality doesn't make you sound smart, it just makes all your conclusions fail by their own standards.
And consequently, as St. Thomas Aquinas reasons, Jonathan, if it doesn't have existence in virtue of its own essence, then it must receive that existence from something outside of itself.
See, I fucking called it. I have given this thing this property that it has to have by the fact that I defined it as needing to have it. And now that means I can say something unrelated, undemonstrable, because it's goddamn unreal. But has to now do the real, so the definition that I decided on gets to make some kind of sense. Even though it still doesn't. Aside from the fact that, in one way he's right, something outside the tree did give it essence and did give it the definition of existence, it was Tim Tam Thomas Ackwood's Barbie Girl is a banger, or whatever his name is. But here is the important part, Tomothy. You don't get to give something random attributes and automatically have us all agree with you for no reason. And that's not just because you're dead and can't make anyone do anything anymore, but mostly because you're full of shit.
And that leads us to, in a reasoning process.
Reasoning? Process? Leads? There's nothing about that even remotely resembles reason, let alone a process or leads. Not that those two mattered, but I just needed to say more things because I'm that flabbergasted by this whole ordeal.
To conclude that there has to be some cause, Jonathan.
Two things. No, there really doesn't need to be some cause. that make a tree have the essence of existing because of previously discussed points, mostly the one about essence being total horseshit. But the thing that's really getting my dick into a Gordian knot is that you keep saying the caller's name. Why? What possible purpose does that serve? Are you making it clear that you haven't forgotten his name? Like a co-worker that you've known for decades and only just realized that you have no idea what to call them. So you desperately search the office for some clue as to what you're actually supposed to call them other than buddy or pal or, legend. And then you finally hear someone else talk to him using his name. You are going to use that shit like it is going out of fashion. Or is it that you are telling him off kind of thing and you want to make damn sure he knows he's being spoken to? He called you, right? Same reason why it can't possibly be you reminding him what his name is. Yeah? Surely he already knows that, right? Right?
That, unlike the tree, does not have to receive its existence from something outside of itself, but has existence in virtue of its own essence or nature.
An essence or nature that you have given it, not discovered or discerned using anything in reality that directly reflects upon it, but simply you said it is so it must have it. Theists love to say atheists think that they are gods, but will then turn around and explicitly stake dominion over God and what he is, and never, ever, ever see the massive irony in that.
And the reason why that is necessary, Jonathan, because without such a cause from which the tree and everything like it could receive their existence, you would have no existence.
By your incredibly stupid definition, one that, of course, many will utterly reject because it obviously presupposes its conclusion. It has to be this way because if it's not that way, then my God doesn't need to exist, and then again, what the hell am I even doing? It's utterly circular and absolutely exhausting.
Because everything would be like the tree, not having existence in virtue of its own essence or nature, in which case you would have a bunch of existential zeros. In other words, you would have a bunch of things with no existence, and you would have nothing.
Okay, I'll give him this. His brain clearly has essence, and it does not have existence as part of that. And even if it does, I'm pretty sure it doesn't have works, or smart, or worth a goddamn, or anything else that makes brain more useful than a bowl of weak old mouldy sludge. Again, this only appears to be the conclusion because that's what your definition is setting up. But ironically, all of your definitions are contingent on you defining them that way. Without the desperate search for God, you would have no reason to define anything this way. So you would not, could not, ever come to this conclusion based on a definition no one would even come up with in the first place if they weren't already doing what you're doing.
But there is something. And so therefore there must be some cause that has existence in virtue of just what it is, and has the power to give that existence to things like the tree.
Oh, the presumptive nonsense never ceases. The ability to give existence is another of the things that you have decided it can do, not a thing that you have any way of demonstrating that an outside the universe thing is even plausibly capable of.
And this sort of cause is what St. Thomas Aquinas, Jonathan, calls a first cause, or the uncaused cause. Does not have to be caused by another to exist, because it just simply has existence in virtue of what it is.
The universe's essence is that it is a thing that exists and has things that exist inside of it. There, your entire house of cards comes tumbling down around your ears, using your own ridiculous definition to do it. Can you see now why defining things as what you want them to be instead of as you can show them to be means anyone could just co-opt the entire deal right from under you? Probably not.
Dr. Edward Fazer articulates this kind of proof in his book, 5 Proofs of the Existence of God, known as the Thomistic Proof.
And the video just kind of ends there. And you know what the funniest part in all of this is? Not the constant defining things into existence, not the terrible arguments based on hundreds of years old garbage, or all the other nonsense spouted in this video. It's the fact that he never even answers poor Jonathan's question in the first place. What an absolute doof. Bye!